Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unicon 2021. Thank you so much for chiming in. And I know it's at 11 a.m. this morning in beautiful Singapore. So, my name is Sean, and this is Rolf. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the future of sustainability. So, there's more things to come, and I hope you guys are really excited to learn a little bit more about what we're doing in Unilever and how we're making it a sustainable business. Please do chime in at the end of the last Q&A session and feel free to ask any questions. So thanks. All right. So as I said earlier, this is our introduction. My name is Sean. I'm a UFLP.
Hi, and I'm Raouf Prasojo. I'm a senior manager at the Sustainable Sourcing team within procurement.
Right. So as we introduce ourselves today, you can see that since I've graduated from NTU in 2019, this is kind of like my roadmap as to what has happened. So once I've graduated, I joined UFLP. I started as a flavors buyer, which essentially was buying all the flavors for your food to taste really good or your ice cream to taste really sweet. I then moved into customer service to do a little bit of demand and supply planning. And then I moved to shoppers marketing, which was really around like activations and last mile activation. So when you go to like the NTUCs and you see the displays, that was done by me. And now I'm back with procurement, doing a little bit more about strategic planning. So yeah, I mean that's my journey as since I've graduated. And at every milestone you can see, there are actually wonderful pictures that I've actually taken to congregate like to commemorate my events. Yeah.
And so I guess this is okay. This is I think we're both clicking something, Xian.
Sorry.
Want to click it so that we get into the next slide?
Right.
Here,
Oh
okay.
my gosh, I clicked it again. Sorry, technical error. All right, Ralph, to you. I won't touch it
Okay.
anymore.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so I've been asked to kind of just showcase a little bit about my career so far, actually. So these are some images taken throughout the time. I think that I might be a little bit older than you, Tian. I don't know, I actually studied economics as an undergraduate at a a U.S. liberal arts college, and I started off my career as a journalist and broadcaster. So kind of far away from consumer goods, where I was working and living in Washington, D.C. at the time. I started writing a lot actually about sustainable development, and particularly on partnerships between the United States and Indonesia, where I'm from. And this is where I really got exposed to economics and the intersections with the environment. So after that, I worked at a research organization called the World Resources Institute. And so I started in DC, and then I eventually moved to Jakarta. And this is the second picture after broadcasting is the traveling actually to remote parts of Indonesia, including this aerial photo of Aceh. And you could see kind of, the conversion of palm oil, and remaining forest still there. And so after several years at I actually didn't have much of an environmental background and education on that. So I pursued my studies, and went to Yale, graduated with a master's degree in environmental management. And I started working in various organizations, including the United Nations Development Program, and also at various different research organizations related to tropical oils and deforestation and the causes of deforestation. So that brought me to places like Brazil, and I was working at a research organization in Tokyo that consumes a lot of these materials as well. Um, Finally went to Unilever. So it took me a while, but I got here. And so I started 5 years ago, actually, around 5.5 years ago, at the Unilever Jakarta office. And for the last 3 years, I've been based in Singapore, where procurement is headquartered, actually. So our chief procurement officer, Dave Ingram, and our main palm buy team, we're all based here in Singapore. Tian?
Right. Actually, it's great to know that because I also started out at NTU as a bio major, and then now I'm actually in procurement. So I think we've both started out somewhere quite interestingly different, and then
Yeah.
found our way to really find a purposeful career through Unilever. Because for me, I wanted to do a little bit more bio stuff related, and then I
Mm.
realized that research wasn't my thing. But then after realizing that I could touch the lives of other people through FMCG goods, I chose Unilever, right? So
Yeah.
just it's quite
Exactly.
interesting.
And I think that our experiences, for me, it was really kind of, the skills that you learn at university and also perhaps in different roles and organizations or and jobs that you have, kind of I think are really much used in Unilever. And what you have here is a large global business that has, I think, a
Exactly.
lot of skills required to run this business, right?
Exactly. So it's like whenever I have students asking me as well, like, oh, I don't have any background, can I still apply? I 100% agree that you should because diversity is what brings an opportunity, especially in such a global scale, right? So these are some statistics for the students. You can see here, like they're, 58% turnover in emerging markets. We're placed over 190 places. We have approximately, 2.5 billion products being used in the whole world, as well as a network of 25 million retail outlets. So these are just some statistics, fine and dandy about Unilever. And this is another slide just to share a little bit about our brands. So we have actually over 400 brands, and I think a lot of people don't realize this when they go to a supermarket and they pick up a bottle, they look at the back, you see a little logo that's like Unilever, and you never realize this is actually part of Unilever's brands, right? And 14 of those top 50, like 14 of those brands are actually the top 50 consumer brands worldwide, right? And of the 13 brands, we actually have a turnover of about more than 1 billion euros. Right. So the next slide shows you a little bit about some of the brands that maybe you have heard of, but you never realized they were under Unilever. So yeah, interestingly. And now this last part is actually a little bit about the procurement of Singapore. So as you can see, we're split across different portfolios in Unilever procurement. And the ones that I've actually indicated as a triangle are ones that are found in Singapore itself. So C&I is like commodities, ingredients, which we're talking about the actual good like milk or like, chocolates, those kind of commodity goods that follow a specific trend, and tea. Another one is about palm. And I think Ralph actually worked alongside with them on this heavily. We also have something called 3PMs, which is our third-party manufacturers, also known as our collaborative manufacturers now, but they're always based in the market, so not so much in Singapore. So I'm part of the chemicals team, which is split amongst different portfolios. There's like four, but the chemicals as a whole also is sit in Singapore. Then there's also one in packaging, dealing with a lot of plastics because plastics is a really hot trend right now. We have a supply chain portfolio, but like as I said, it's also very markets driven. And the last one is MBS, which is really about, our solutions that we provide internally and externally. Right. So then we have a split between the spend by division, which is across home care, beauty, personal care, and foods and refreshments. And this is really about like the total amount of money we spend across different portfolios. And then the last one on the bottom right left corner, yeah, is actually a little bit about the cluster spend. So we do spend a lot globally, but predominantly you can see it's mainly in like Europe or North America, just purely because of the scale of the country as well. Yeah. And now to you, Ralph.
Thank you. So this is really, our mantra here at procurement, specifically with regards to procurement with purpose. And it's purpose-led, value-driven, future fit. And I see this, Stan and I probably see this a lot in the slides, of the leadership team within procurement, but what this is really about. So the purpose-led, being able to buy responsibly. So Unilever being able to buy in bulk because, like Sian was saying, so many products, so many brands. We're able to influence our suppliers about our sustainability requirements and policies, and using this purchasing power that we have to try to do good and influence our suppliers to do better, especially when they want to do business with us. Value driven, being able to buy better. So really looking at data, analytics, forecasting to understand the market and get good deals for Unilever and to create savings. That this would allow for the business to give good value for our products and for our consumers. And then the last is future fit. So being able to grow as a business with our suppliers for consumers. So this is about, a lot of innovation, digital tools that Unilever is very much happy in investing. So I'm involved in some of them this is directly related to our strategy, our insights, or things like traceability or monitoring our supply chain for deforestation, for instance. And the concept, from farm to fork, or ability for consumers to understand where we source our raw materials from, go into Unilever product. This is using the latest technologies, algorithms, artificial intelligence. This is something that a lot of people at Unilever, including myself, are very passionate about and excited about in unlocking and using in the day-to-day work for instance, sustainable sourcing. This, looking at it kind of at a high level perspective of more of the milestones in our sustainable sourcing journey over the last decade, I'll go through some. So in 2010, we launched the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which is really the architecture of the targets in the last decade, including for sustainable sourcing. That same year, we launched our Sustainable Agriculture Code. So this is practically the codes of like what constitutes as sustainable source. So, certain certification programs for certain commodities fall into this category. And it lays the foundation of what we mean by sustainability. In the space of palm oil, in Southeast Asia, right, it's very much palm oil kind of our sourcing here. We launched our no deforestation, no peat conversion, and no exploitation policy. And this has recently been revised and now includes other commodities that we see as high risk of deforestation, such as soy, paper and board, cacao, and tea. So in 2020, we sourced, let's say, 99.6% of our physically certified sustainable palm oil. So slightly off our target, but very close there. And we're very much, one of the largest buyers of sustainable palm oil for consumer goods companies. So able to kind of drive again that space of sustainability. And since last year in 2020, Unilever has updated and created even more ambitious targets and commitments on sustainability. So, if you go online, you can see this. This is what we call kind of the strategy to enhance our ambitions to make sustainability, what we say, sustainability commonplace. Evolving from the Unilever Sustainability Living Plan, and that was launched in 2010, like I said, to now what we call the Compass strategy. To really try to win with our brands and try to be a force of good. And procurement is very much embedded as a crucial change maker and implementer in this. So this includes ways to improve the health of the planet, improve people's health, confidence, and well-being, and also to contribute to a fair and socially inclusive world, where we can respect and promote human rights. So these are some of the elements that I identify within procurement and where procurement is, I think, very much in the driver's seat in achieving many of these goals and ambitions. So the net zero emissions target for our products from sourcing to point of sale by 2023. So that's one of the targets. Having, cutting in half the greenhouse gas impact of our products across the life cycle. Very much, again, related to procurement because of the raw materials, right? So we have to calculate that. Sharing the carbon footprint in every product that we sell. So that transparency element of that, something that we're trying to drive here within procurement. And the ones that I am specifically working on is a deforestation-free supply chain. So specifically in palm, this is related though to paper and board, cacao, soy, and tea, which is 2023. So this is what keeps me up at night, trying to solve this, working with suppliers, our suppliers at Unilever. And then I'll talk a little bit again about the protecting and regenerate of 1.5 million hectares of land, forests, and oceans. So this is also some of the work that I'm working on, and empowering smallholders to protect and regenerate nature. So These are kind of like the compass. I mean, there's a lot, so I don't think we have time to go through every single piece of them, but we can go through some of the examples of the work that we've been doing here. So so this is an example of some positive, what we call impact business case examples that I have. A lot of it's kind of like moving away from like philanthropy and CSR, but really trying to embed sustainability within the supply chain. From the procurement of or materials that we get our suppliers working directly in landscapes where we source these materials from. And the sources of funding, right, for these are either directly embedded in the material cost of these sustainably sourced or deforestation-free material, for instance. So it's the cost of doing business. And some examples that I wanted to talk about, what I personally do, are, let's say, contract negotiations, right? That this is very much something that, within procurement, you have suppliers and you negotiate contracts. But for my work, I do the sustainability part of that. So, you go into it, there's the commercial, my commercial counterparts really looking at the price and what we're talking about, those data analytics. And then, I'm also in the room with our suppliers, with our commercial team that are talking about the sustainability causes. What is required by Unilever to achieve and for the policy for the supplier to implement our and cascade our policy on deforestation free, for instance. And these are, so there's this discussion. So not only within our negotiations on costing, on volumes, whether or not this is the right cost, whether or not, you can provide these volumes and provide delivery on time for our factories. But there's also this aspect on traceability. Where do you get your products from for this material that we want to source? Can we make it transparent for our suppliers? Whether or not, how are we going to achieve, how are our suppliers going to achieve compliance to the Unilever responsible sourcing policy or the Unilever people and nature policy? That's the part that I do at Unilever. And getting to convergence between, a buyer like Unilever, requesting a lot, and what our suppliers can actually provide is really this, I think, an art of negotiation. And this is something that I've learned, coming from NGOs and kind of multilaterals, which, there needs to be this persuasiveness as well, going into kind of more of a meeting room for negotiation on sustainability and how we can, together with our suppliers, comply and reach the targets on sustainability. And so another example that I wanted to share was kind of the business case of Unilever's investments in jurisdictions or production landscapes where we source our materials from. So this is really much trying to look at the strong need to support landscapes from these materials, right? So identifying where these locations are and being able to support and intervene on what we call produce, protect, and include models. So these are models where, this is where we source from. How do we increase sustainable agriculture production output, the produce element? Where can we support, within that same landscape to increase forest protection, the protect or restore element? And how can we include smallholder farmers part of the sustainable supply chain and journey? So this is where we've been partnering with a lot of civil society organizations, environmental and social experts on the ground. And really, this is what motivates me, I think, what wakes me up and gets me really excited to be part of this organization. My trips and now more calls with the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, WWF. We have a project there in Sabah, Malaysia, and this is kind of like a screenshot of, if you want to know more, you can kind of Google it or go to our website of this elephant corridor where we source our material from. So there's a plantation, and that plantation is between these two forest reserves. And there's all these elephants roaming around and destroying the crops. But we're trying to create this corridor so that the elephants can go between these forest reserves, and the orangutans can go between these forest reserves quite freely. And so we're restoring land there, planting trees. And so this is just one example. There's another one in, let's say, with Conservation International in North Sumatra, where there's an agroforestry restoration project with local communities. Or one that I was just talking about the other day with Forum Konservasi Loser, on a deforestation monitoring platform with local communities and local governments to protect the Loser ecosystem in Aceh. So before COVID, I would travel frequently to manage these sites and meet people implementing, so much positive work on the ground. And this has made me, really, again, excited looking at the direct investments that Unilever has been doing to protect and regenerate nature. And again, the commitments are out there. This is our CEO saying the next investment for the next decade for Unilever is this 1 billion euro investments to support Unilever on this journey to protect and regenerate nature. So that's my example. Sorry, a little bit long. Xian, off to you now.
No, but I love the fact that like you were talking about the regeneration or how do we co-develop an environment with animals essentially without harming them in such a scale that will definitely help the world. I mean, for example, when you talked about the elephant and the farm, I suddenly just thought of like, oh, it's like Singapore's Eco Bridge, that bridge between a huge highway, but
Exactly.
nothing really happened there, I believe. We don't even know if boars use them or animals use them. But when it comes to such a big scale about elephants and the crops, it really does. I can visualize it essentially. It does happen at that level, you
Yeah, and
know.
we really need to like these experiences, right? Because you go to the field and we really need to try to figure out a way to coexist with nature and biodiversity with the requirements of, billions of people requiring food and products, right? So this is, I think, like, you go into a boardroom with, or, talking with people in meeting rooms with companies and with Unilever, and I think that that's really what drives me, and it's like, how can we solve this problem, right? You can't just keep on sourcing from areas and that aren't unsustainable, but how can we kind of do good better and do better? So yeah, so
Exactly.
those are some examples.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the world population will not change anytime soon, and we can't stop producing products. So how do we then coexist in the same field? I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it as an example. I think also just to tap onto the fact that you were talking a little bit more about negotiations. Yes, procurement is always about negotiations, but that is where the power we have to really define what we want to say and what we want to do in this world. So I think that's what really is very different from every other organization, I feel. Unilever puts in a hard, firm narrative and communications that is really crucial to what we want to strive as a certain agenda. And if no one's going to do it, we can't wait for other people to do it. Let's just do it ourselves, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that what's also unique at Unilever though is also that, like everybody's experience at Unilever is very different, right? So I think that I'm very interested to know more about like what you've been doing also in this space with, business and sustainability kind of like interact with each other.
Very true. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
Right. So, I just joined chemicals the month of August. So I'm quite new to a little bit about the sustainability agenda that's happening within chemicals. But so far, what I've heard is that there is a lot of emphasis on GHG. So as you saw earlier, the one that Ralph had shared as well, there are a lot of pillars and a lot of things that we want to commit to. So within like chemicals, what we're trying to focus on is really having a net zero by 2039, as well as a GHG reduction, essentially. So with this, you can actually see from the graph itself that there are a couple of ways where we assessed where the production happens. So if you look into the two arrows and the one green arrow that goes up, there's basically an analysis of where the GHG production happened. So this was something that was created with the World Resource Institute. So like what Ralph was saying earlier, we work alongside with a lot of external experts who actually know what they're talking about, with a lot of research paper back behind all of the evidence of what's happening with the product. So scope 1 is really about the company itself. When you actually have a company that is set up, when we sit inside an office, all the direct the direct components of manufacturing the product is called that the scope 1, where we release all the types of GHG gases. The upstream activities, which is a little bit about scope 3, is the process of getting the things in order, and for example traveling, coming to the office. How do we purchase our goods, as well as our goods and services, and then a lot of it comes with like the transportation of the goods to the manufacturing site. That kind of the concept is more upstream, right? The second one, which is a little bit about downstream, it's also called indirects, but this is really about processing the products, packaging, the use of the products, the investments that go into the products, that like marketing and so on, the purchasing. We actually analyze all of these components, so we then are able to define, okay, this is basically the life cycle of what happens to a particular product. We want to assess every component and see how we can reduce GHG as an overall life cycle, right? So that's why when it comes to 100% reduction of scope 1 and 2, right, by 2030, as well as maybe a 75% by 2025, there really is a lot of statistics as to what we want to achieve, but we are starting to play at different components where we can reduce as much as we can, right? So the second slide, which is one of the solutions that we came out in chemicals, this is called the carbon rainbow solution, where it's really whatever we've produced, how do we then either capture it, reuse it, and put it back into our life cycle without using more. So the point is that we acknowledge the fact that we have to produce certain things. For example, in organics, we have soda ash that comes into our home care products, which is like the powdered formats. We know we can't get rid of powdered formats, or we can transition to liquid formats, but some markets are just not ready to transition yet. So in this cycle of, in the process of trying to transition, how do we then reduce our whole carbon consumption through the process of renewability, right? So this is quite interesting that we have actually defined different tiers of carbon captures from gray, blue, green, purple, and that's why we call it the carbon rainbow. And this is how we're going to diversify our carbon resources, right? So for example, in the rainbow, past the disposal site, there's a lot of degradation that happens behind the products, and this also emits a lot of carbon carbon gases. So, I mean, GHG gases, sorry. So the chemical, like for example, plastic waste is something that's what we call gray carbon. There's something from plants where it degrades, where we would then recycle it back. There's also blue carbon that comes from marine sources like algae. You've heard about like the whole algae replacement of electricity. And the last one is a little bit about carbon dioxide. So how we then, from the carbon dioxide that is being released into the atmosphere, how do we capture it, repurpose it, and then reapply it to our products again? And no worries, it's all very safe. So the next slide actually shows a little bit more in detail about the carbons that I had mentioned earlier. So for example, the carbon blue is algae, as I said, but what I want to share with you guys a little bit more is actually the purple carbon. So it's captured from CO2 from the atmosphere through our manufacturing sites. And something that Unilever has piloted now is a manufacturing site in India that helps you capture the carbons and then resource it as a whole. So the next slide will show you the case study of this. So soda ash, I said earlier, from inorganics, or also known as sodium carbonate, is one of the core ingredients for, the laundry detergents, which is the powdered form. And this is the ingredient that helps you cut through the grease and also softens the water, essentially. So make sure that you remove or make sure that your clothes are really clean at the end of the day, right? So this is one of the key ingredients that is most energy intensive, and it's actually being sourced from fossil fuels. So clearly we don't want to be part of like contributing to the environment by digging more fossil fuels. So the renewable solution is actually, we're partnering with a company called TAC in southern India, where they're pioneering this technology to capture the carbon sources that are being produced and repurposing it. So therefore, we actually are a major partner, buying like over 50% of the soda ash. But by doing this, we're able to reduce that consumption exponentially. And within time, when this technology proves itself, we can actually start to develop a process process that every maybe other manufacturing site has to then use this new technology. So it's this kind of like case study where we will take such real life examples and repurpose it into other manufacturing sites at scale. So not only are we just making a dent in the market, we're really revolutionizing the market, as I would believe. But it will definitely take time. And even though our commitment is at 2039, I believe we're trying to strive 5 years before that. So it's going to be a tough fight, but I think no matter what, we're still going to strive our best and still adhere to the commitments we provided to the environment and to the wider scale, right? Anything you want to add on, Ralph?
No. I think
Okay.
that's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, so if you guys have any
definitely.
questions, do add it into the chat because right now we're gonna share a little bit more about our day-to-day life, right? So living a purposeful life through Unilever was something I experienced these last 2 years. Granted, a year was almost in COVID all the time, but before that, having meaningful connections with people, working alongside people with the same type of mentality and direction and drive is what makes me feel more motivated to go to work every day to make a difference. But obviously, we can't always say work is work and there's no fun. So during COVID, I picked up like three new skills. Well, one was like golf. I tried to pick up golf, just to learn about the environment and maybe appreciate it a little bit more. Because I feel like when you're so out of touch of the environment, you won't realize what you're trying to make a difference in, right? And the second one is a little bit about skating. So I know I like to dance. So now I'm trying to practice how to jam skate. And lastly, with everything comes with a balance. So mine was a little bit about meditation and yoga. So that's what I live through actually for my day to day. Don't
No,
judge
it's great.
me.
I mean, I've been always trying to touch my toes for for the longest time, and for some reason now, because you have some limitations on the apps now, so you're like, oh, I can do more yoga classes after work or something like that. So
Come,
that's
Ralph, let's go to the new office and have a yoga session together. And now
yeah.
to you.
No, yeah, great. No, so I mean, and this is like my final slide as well. So before we go into Q&A, right? So I posted this a couple of months ago when I reached a 5-year milestone at Unilever, and I hardly post things on LinkedIn. I'm more of a follower, and I try to kind of like see what my friends are doing or my colleagues are doing from there, but. I really wanted to reflect a little bit about my 5 years. And so I went to my phone one, Friday afternoon, and I tried to pick out 5 photos that could represent the 5 years, what it's been like here. And so here are some of them. So the first thing was really, I mean, I'm really happy to be part of and actively part of trying to do good to the earth, right? There's lots of discussion on how to do that. And I think that, yes, let's try at least, right? And I think that that's what Unilever is really trying to do. So here's again another site that we are restoring. So in Malaysia. Number two is finding friends at work and doing hobbies together outside. So over coffee when we were back in the office, I would often talk and say, hey, I really like diving. And so like some of my colleagues, we were like, oh, let's go to Raja Ampat. So this is one of them. And again, continuous learning from the people I meet at the job is one of the best experiences as well. So I don't get bored. Like when I go to the field, when I go to the office, I feel that I'm learning from my colleagues. I'm learning from the smallholders that provide us material. And then being able to share these experiences and brainstorming together with my colleagues, with industry actors, with other experts in this field, and trying to implement them, it's really something really great. And then now as we kind of come to this more than 1 year, 18 months COVID time is really kind of relying on ways and technologies to kind of still connect with our team members, and our partners, that we work together with. So these are just kind of some reflections of, it's not always like within this room, but it's also kind of going and being able to interact. And I think that that's something that's really special at Unilever with regards to being able to connect your career and your passion and have a good time while you do that, is something really, what I wanted to, I guess, my last slide talk about a little bit. But we do want to make sure that there is time for Q&A. How do we do
Right.
this?
I will throw questions at you. So thanks everyone for submitting your questions. Please do continue to do so. So maybe the first question was actually provided by Cindy. She asked, what are some of the criteria used to assess the sustainability of your products and processes? So I think during the presentation itself, we also shared a little bit about working with our external parties. But every portfolio, I think, goes through a different type of measurement. So for example, packaging would measure their PCR consumptions and the use of virgin plastics. So that's really purely about spend. Ralph, to you, if you have anything to add on to this as well.
Yeah, no, so like let's say I was talking a little bit about this, what we define as sustainability. So we have the Sustainability Agriculture Code that then kind of determines, which certification and it's publicly out there that we would consider as sustainably sourced. So for paper and board, for instance, it's FSC certification. For RSPO, it's for palm oil, it's RSPO, right? And so for tea, there's kind of like the Rainforest Alliance standard. And so I think that those are, again, transparent in terms of like how we came up to numbers to define deforestation, to define sustainably sourced. And then moving for deforestation free as well, there are mechanisms of how we would determine, monitor, verify deforestation free in any claims that we would want to make publicly.
Right, that's a really good answer. I think that clarifies it. So I think if anyone has any other questions, we could definitely reach out separately on this. The next question actually was, where do you see Unilever in the sustainability space in 5 years' time? Ralph, do you have any sense as to where it would be in 5 years?
So the compass goal, right? That there's a lot of the goals that we need to get to. They've been set for like in 2020 and by 2023, deforestation-free supply chain. 2039 you were talking about. So about the carbon reduction plans. So there's again, there's a bunch of sustainability commitments and milestones throughout, the next practically 2039 that we have to do. That includes our supply chain, carbon emissions, landscapes that we want to protect and regenerate nature. So they're all there. There's a lot, but I think that is why I think the sustainability team, the procurement commercial teams are all trying to work really hard and also trying to see really I think motivated people like people on this call to try to join our team and be part of this journey with us.
Agreed. I was just going to say as well, every team is at a different stage. Packaging is way ahead. Other people are still ideating or still getting down their strategies. So it's like all moving at different phases, but everyone is definitely moving, because of the commitments. We just like have to get it done.
Yeah.
All right. Another question from Anne, or actually more it's a comment. So it's a shout out basically to NTU bio students. Hey everyone, nice to see you. All right, the next one, Boston actually asked, what's your favorite product? Rao?
There are a lot, yeah. Like I go to my cabinet and because you work on these products all day. And so Lifebuoy is the alcohol, like the hand is something that I have and I use a lot to wash my hands, right? Seventh Generation is also a product that I really like and you can find in Singapore. And I'm a big tea drinker. So, Lipton in Indonesia, there's Sariwangi. I use that a lot. And then once, it gets in the evening time, I switch to the Pukka brand. So those are some of my, what you could find in my house at least. How about you?
I really like Magnum.
Yeah.
It's so decadent, It's like every now and then you just need to relax with very good vanilla ice cream. You're like, yeah. But I like the miniature ones because it makes me control a little bit better. All right. So the next question was from Joy. She asked that, so looking at the portfolio diversity of procurement, she said that MBS is one of the highest spends and whether we could clarify on this. So just to share with you, basically MBS has both directs and indirects. So you can think about like the solutions that support the procurement teams, like for example, MS Teams, or even just like the day-to-day tools that we use to analyze and do market research, or even competitor analysis. Those are the tools that fall under MBS. Other things also fall like advertising. So a lot of the agencies that we work with are also falling under the category of MBS. They're basically business solutions that help support the business a lot more. It's kind of the bread and butter of what makes Unilever work as well in between besides buying products, right? So that's all why the spend is so high. We're trying to narrow it down. Obviously, not as easy, but as much as we can do, they become necessary and things that are just good to have. So it's always a constant review about this kind of concept, right? So then, anything to add on that, Ralph?
No,
All right.
you covered it.
Okay. Oh, a question I think would be really good for you is, how does a day-to-day in procurement department look like? Can you explain what your daily tasks are in respective of your roles? So I think Ralph.
This is for both of them. I think that, both of our, and I think everybody's day-to-day tasks might be a little bit different. And I just want to say that, Unilever is also quite flexible in terms of how you work. So I recently became a father and, in terms of like the time, as long as you do the work, and deliver, I sometimes now like, because I have to I help feed my child. And so it's like 2 a.m. I'll be, emailing, but then perhaps I come in a little later or start my day a little later. But my day-to-day task before this, because it's been a month, right? Is really it's always different. There's one day where I need to be on a call with an NGO, for instance, asking, hey, there's this monitoring, we detected deforestation here, for instance, and that's one of the tasks that I do. There's another day where I have to negotiate with the supplier. And then or like work and have a call with WWF, for instance, and understand what how the project is doing. Before, I think that there was a lot of travel, right? So you would meet your suppliers directly, you would go to the field directly, and that I think brought me away. But that's really what I liked, kind of going to the field, going back to the office, being able to kind of do these things. But I think now it's really I think it's a little bit quieter, so I try to block my morning and with a lot of the work and a lot of this email, and then starting from 2 p.m. when Europe starts until kind of like 7 probably is where I have a lot of calls and meetings with my counterparts in London or Rotterdam, for instance. How
Yeah,
about you?
I
Yeah,
totally
is that you
feel
too?
you, Ralph.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was working in USPL, which is the Singapore arm, it was really 9 to 5, right? Singapore
Yeah.
time. Post that, we really shut off, right? But while I'm here in chemicals, because I assist with the VP of chemicals, she sits in Switzerland. So my working hours probably start a little bit later. And I love the flexibility that comes with this because people, they don't impose a certain time zone for you to work in, but they would appreciate if you can manage your own time as well. If the job is done, the job is done. Call it a day, Take care of yourself, essentially. So my day-to-day really, it does vary a lot as well. It kind of starts late, and then we have meetings with the VP, with all the directors, really getting down to strategies, talking about specific things are very important. And people is actually one of the biggest topics that always come around our conversations. It's how do we make sure that procurement is, doing the best job they can? How are the people feeling? Are they very stressed, or what can we do to make things better? So it's always a lot of conversation. And then from that level, how do we then disseminate or really take action to really make procurement the best place to be? So thanks so much, Vishaka Chowdhury. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. But yeah, thank you everyone for your questions so far. Um, The next one, I think we can have one last question. I think it'll be really quite interesting to hear a little bit about COVID. So Ishwar asked, I would like to know how has the early stages of COVID-19 affected the procurement activities of Unilever, and how has Unilever responded to these disruptions? So Ralph, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I mean, I think in general, right, it's a lot of kind of resilient supply chains. And I think that, within the supply chain and procurement elements and it is really trying to understand how we can still deliver products with these disruptions. I think, there's been hiccups, but I know that it has been quite a challenging, but then also, the hard work has paid off in terms of like an ability for the procurement team and the supply chain to be able to deliver products. So, I mean, specifically in my work, I think there has been some delays with regards to, restoration activities, working in smallholders. With smallholders, right? You can't really congregate in a in a team, like in a meeting, and so there's been some delays there. But I think that with the vaccinations and ability to kind of travel more now, within kind of like areas, it's picking up. But yeah, I think that I think what we say in Unilever is really trying to be more, having that empathy of what's going on, and trying to still do our best from the technology that we have as well. So
Agreed, and I 100% agree. I mean, I think I've never used my computer so much before in my life. So
or
many
Zoom
meetings.
calls, right?
Yeah. All right. So I'm sorry, everyone, that had a lot of questions. So they were really good questions, and I really do apologize we couldn't finish talking about them or answering them. But we will be answering them through our IGs for the next couple of days at the hashtag at Unilever SG Careers. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next talk that will happen in an hour, and do use the platform to win some points. If I'm not wrong, there's some really amazing prizes. So I'm very jealous. So do take full advantage of it. And it was really wonderful hosting today's call with you, and Ralph. Anything
Yeah.
you want to say?
No, thanks so much for the opportunity and listening to us. I mean, I always, I saw some questions there about UFLP, and like we very much value in the sustainable sourcing team, new fresh minds as well. And so there are ways to get into sustainability or within kind of like more of the business elements of it. So we really much looking for your applications and for you to be joining our team.
Yep. Thanks so much, everyone. So see you in
Thank
an
you.
hour.
Have a good lunch.